Hello all you beautiful people, my name is Wallaby Gangsta. I am currently a Grand Champ Sideswipe player with multiple top 16 rival tournament finishes. I also stream over on twitch.tv/wallaby_gangsta, so come check me out over there if you do like my content here. Today, I'm going to be talking about and showing you a way to do a mechanic that previously was thought to be impossible to do on PC in a way that was viable at the higher levels. I'm going to be going over how to successfully do what I call a 180 air roll. There's a lot of other different names, such as the 180 snap, the 180 half flip, and so on and so forth, but regardless of what you call it, I'm going to be going over how to make it work, as well as why this can change the way everyone, high levels especially, plays Sideswipe. First, let's talk about what a 180 air roll actually is. It's about as simple as it sounds. All you have to do is you go up into the air and you hit L2 or LB, depending on which controller you have, and your car will immediately turn 180 degrees into the air. I'll be showing this on screen for you as I'm actually explaining these, so that way it's a little bit more understandable. Currently, the reason this is important is because the only way that you can turn 180 degrees in the air as of this moment on PC is to use air roll in order to do the turn. Again, I'll be showing that, and as you can see, it is significantly slower than using the 180 air roll. So how is this going to change the game? Why is a faster air roll this important? Well, other than the fact that it increases your recovery speed and gives you better control of your car in the air, it also allows you to do certain mechanics that actually are only possible by using a 180 air roll. For example, there's currently a mechanic that exists called an air roll stall that you use in the air. I'll be showing it on the screen behind me, and while I won't explain it in this video, if it does get requested, I can show people how to actually do this mechanic. But how does a 180 air roll change this mechanic? Well, currently, you are limited by the speed of what you can do by your air roll. So you can really only chain together the air roll stalls in a very specific speed. But with the 180 air roll, all of a sudden this becomes instant. And so by chaining together these 180 air rolls, you can actually greatly increase the speed at which you can do these stalls, and it allows you to carry the stall almost all the way across the field if you do get good enough at it, which pretty much gives you an infinite amount of boosts and flips, as well as makes it almost impossible to read what you're actually going to do, because at any point out of any of these stalls, you can purple shot it, or you can gold shot it over the top, or straight into the net depending on how close you are. Obviously, this definitely changes the way this one mechanic works, but what are some other mechanics that you can actually do using this 180 air roll? I'll be showing the mechanics on the screen behind me as I'm trying to explain them. That way you can see the speed at which they're happening, as well as it can help to visualize what is going on, and you're not relying on just my words. In this first clip, you can see that I am essentially purple shotting it away from me instantly, even though I am facing away from the ball. This can obviously be very useful and very confusing for the defenders, because all they see is that you're facing away from the ball, and now they have to be worried about the threat of you potentially purple shotting it away, even though you aren't even close to set up for position. This cannot be done currently on Bluestacks, as the air roll in the air doesn't actually move fast enough for you to actually purple shot it away from you, and it becomes very obvious from the defender what you're doing and what you're capable of at the time. In this next clip, I'm going to be showing you a mechanic you can use the 180 air roll for on the ground in order to quickly pop the ball up to potentially your teammate or over an opponent. This mechanic is actually called the Killy Pop, as it's a mechanic that currently exists, but right now the only way you can do it on Bluestacks is you essentially have to hit the ball, get up underneath it, jump, and then air roll, and then when the bottom of your car meets the ball, you then do a neutral jump in order to pop the ball up into the air. This is still useful even using just the normal air roll, but as you can see, it is a little bit slow and can be pretty obvious to the opponent, especially if they've seen it before. Now let's see what the Killy Pop looks like when we use the 180 air roll. It's obviously much faster, and this is definitely a tool that can be used in order to surprise the opponent and set up passing plays with your teammate, especially if you work on them beforehand. So before we go any further in this tutorial, it's very important to note that the only people that this is actually useful for are the people trying to play Sideswipe on their computer using Bluestacks. There are two other ways of playing that actually have access to the 180 air roll, one being mobile and one being a hybrid, where you essentially are using the jump and the boost on the mobile side, and then on the left hand side you're using L1, L2 in order to get your air roll and your 180 air roll, as well as the left joystick for more 360 responsiveness in your movement. There's actually a player in OCE named Schmory who would use this hybrid method to great effect, and I advise you to go watch some of their clips, as they can really show you what the 180 air roll is truly capable of in a competitive setting. So, let's start working on getting the 180 air roll set up. First and foremost, you're going to need two programs before we get started. I'm going to be putting links to both of these programs down in the description so that way you have easy access. The first one is going to be Bluestacks, as we've mentioned multiple times in this video already. If you don't know how to set up Bluestacks and you don't already have it, I advise that you go online and look up some tutorials, as there are really good ones out there that can show you how to get everything set up to work properly. The second program you're going to need is a program called REWASD. This is a program that allows you to remap your bindings on your computer and your controller, and has really good responsiveness between your actual remappings. A really important thing to note, however, before we go any further, is that you actually have to unlock REWASD by spending $7 American to get it permanently. There is a 14-day free trial, so I advise you use this in order to make sure that this method works properly for you. If this is a problem for you and you can't get the funds in order to accomplish this, there are some free remap programs that are out there, such as DS4 Windows. However, I have not been able to get this method to work as smoothly as it does with REWASD, so I'm going to be showing you the best possible way that you can get this set up, as well as how I accomplish this, and that way you can potentially use the remaps from other programs in order to get this to work for yourself on a free method. Now that you've gotten both of those downloaded, let's move on to the first step of this process. Open up Bluestacks and go into your game, and let's first move over to the right side of the screen and click on Game Controls, of which I'm showing in the background behind me. Once you've clicked on Game Controls, let's then proceed to click on Open Advanced Editor in order to get into the keybind system that Bluestacks uses. Now that we're in the Bluestacks Controls Editor, let's go to the top of the screen and click Keyboard and Mouse in order to get to the KBM section. You have to do keyboard and mouse and not gamepad, as when you do the script on gamepad, it does not work properly. Once we're in keyboard and mouse, we're going to go over to the right side and bring the script bubble over into the right side of the screen. Where exactly you put this bubble doesn't matter quite as much. However, I would highly advise that you keep it away from some of the other control bubbles, as well as make sure that you're not too close to the top right of the screen where the friends and the settings icons lie, as you might accidentally hit them. Once we've got that placed, hover over the script bubble and let's open up the script settings by clicking on the gear icon. Now that we've gotten into the script settings, you should see key bindings and properties, which holds the script key as well as the X and Y axis of the script bubble. In the key bindings, let's change the script key to X, as this is what I'm going to be using when we import the remaps later on, and you're going to want it to be the same key. In the properties, you do not need to change the X and Y axis to what I have, but if yours are different, please know what they are, as you are going to need them later on. Now that we've gotten the properties set up, let's X out of that window and go to the blue icon that's hovering over the script bubble. This will open up the script editor, which is where we're going to be putting in the script that will actually accomplish the 180 air roll, which we're going to remap later. You'll want it to be exactly like it is on my screen, and the numbers 86 and 28 for me represent the X and Y axis respectively. So if yours are different, please take what you noted down earlier and input them here. We can now close out of the script editor once this is done, and make sure that on the bottom right, under current configuration actions, you hit save. This is really important, as it will not save your actions otherwise, so you want to be doing this before we X out of everything and we move on. We can now close out of the controls editor and minimize Bluestacks, as we're not going to need it until later. In the description below, I've provided an REWASD link, which holds the config files we're going to need to import into the REWASD program. I'm going to be explaining what each of these key bindings are and why they're useful and needed, but for the sake of ease, we're going to be doing this so that way we can avoid any potential mistakes while we're getting this set up. Once you've hit that link in the description and then hit import config in order to get that configuration downloaded, it will show you the steps needed in order to get that into your program. However, we're going to go over them anyways here, so that way we're all on the same page. Let's get the REWASD program loaded up, and let's go and hit the plus sign up at the top in order to create a new configuration. There's going to be an import from file bubble that you're going to want to click, and then you're going to want to click the 3 dots on the right side to bring up your downloads file where you're going to select the file we just downloaded. On the config name, you can name it to whatever you want to, it doesn't really matter, and then hit OK in order to create the new configuration that I have provided you. Once you've actually imported the file, it should look something like the screen does behind me. However, it's going to look a little bit different if you do have an Xbox controller, so don't worry about that too much. You then want to make sure that you hit apply up in the top left in order to actually get this to start working. The auto detect associated apps in the top right is important if you only want this to trigger for certain applications. However, I've not personally messed with that as much, so I'm not entirely sure how all of that works. In the bottom left, after you hit apply, you're going to see a remap is on button. If you want to turn this particular keybind mapping off, all you have to do is click that button and it will turn it off and make sure that it doesn't work on any of your other programs. If you play normal Rocket League, you'll find that this is actually super important and very useful, as it will apply to your Rocket League program if you do not turn it off beforehand. Now let's explain what each of these bindings are and what they actually mean, so that way if you have any different kind of bindings or you use any different keys, you can actually understand what you need to change in order to fit your particular setup. On the front facing, you'll see that there are 2 particular keys changed, and mine it's the X and the circle. The circle is going to be left shift, which is actually your keyboard and mouse binding for boost, and the X is going to be space, which is actually the keyboard and mouse binding for jump. If you have different bindings for these, all you have to do is make sure you set those up properly and get them onto the right keys that you're using. We're now going to hit this button on the right, which is going to show our back-facing viewpoint of our gamepad. You'll notice that it is R and L, which is R2 and L2, or right trigger and left trigger if you're on Xbox controllers. Please note that L does have X, which is the script that we set up earlier in Bluestacks, and what actually makes the 180 air roll work. If you have your L2 bound to something different, I advise you either move those bindings, or you can put X on a different key on the front or back facing, but please make sure that it is bound to something. Now that we have those keybinds set up, and it's applied and the configuration is turned on, we can then go back into Bluestacks in order to make sure that this is working properly. One of the differences you're going to be seeing that you're not really entirely used to is that the icons on the screen actually will not be disappearing. This is because we are technically using keyboard and mouse to trigger those icons, so they're going to stay the entire match. This can be very annoying, and it was very annoying for myself, so in order to fix this, what we'll do is we'll go to the settings in the top right, we'll go to show options, and then we'll go to configure to get into the control customization portion. In this portion, all you have to do is click on the icons and turn the opacity down to the very lowest setting in order to make them completely disappear. Now this is all the steps you technically need in order to make the 180 air roll work. If it works for you, congratulations, you're all set up and you're ready to go. However, I've done a lot of tutorials online myself, and I know that it doesn't always work right on the first go around. Brody and I definitely came across some problems while we were setting up this method, so I'm going to try to preemptively answer some of those questions that you may have. The first question is actually the biggest roadblock that Brody and I came across while we were setting up the method. When you go into Sideswipe, what can happen is that when you hit the 180 air roll button, it doesn't actually go on your initial press, and you have to press it again in order to get it to work. This actually happens when your bindings that you have in REWASD are not set up properly to mirror the keyboard bindings that you need for your game. What you need to do at this point is you need to see what your keyboard bindings are bound to, and then change the bindings in REWASD to properly match those. This is the left shift space and X that I have bound on the controller for REWASD in the config map that I provided. An example of how this can happen is sometimes people use square in order to boost within the Sideswipe game. This is because square and circle actually both trigger boost within the native controls for the game. In order to fix this, all you need to do is you need to go into the REWASD config and you need to essentially click on square and change the binding to left shift. I have it at circle because this is what I use, but all you have to do is make that change and it should make it to where you do not have to hit the 180 air roll button twice. Also, remember that you need to hit apply after all changes that you make to the keybind configuration. Another problem that can happen is that you can actually suddenly lose the ability to air roll normally, as well as lose the ability to use your left joystick to move around. This is pretty easily remedied by going to the bottom right of the Bluestacks window, hitting the settings, going to the gamepad section, and changing underneath the gamepad input settings the allow games direct access to your gamepad to on. This should fix that problem, and if you have any other problems, please make a note in the comment section below and I can try to help you out as I see all of your issues. This marks the end of the tutorial, so hopefully all of you were able to successfully bind 180 air roll into your Bluestacks program. If this tutorial did help you, please leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel here, as well as go and check me out at twitch.tv/wallaby_gangsta, where I do Sideswipe and Rocket League content. This tutorial would actually not be possible without the help of Brody, who helped me figure out this method. So please go check him out on Twitch as well, where I'm going to leave a link to his channel below in the description. He does Sideswipe and Rocket League content, but if you do go check out his Twitch channel, make sure you remember to tell him that Wallaby's better at Sideswipe. It's really important, trust me. I'm also going to be leaving a link to Schmory's Twitch channel down below, where you can go and you can see the 180 air roll being masterfully implemented in competitive play. That does mark the end of this video, however, so I hope all of you have a great rest of your day, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you all in the next Twitch stream.